Did you know that in 2025, some countries have made it almost impossible for Canadians to visit? From surprising cultural conflicts to unexpected political tensions, these travel bans will leave you shocked. Stay tuned to find out which countries have shut their doors to Canadians. Welcome to our channel. In today's video, we're exploring a controversial and eye-opening topic: 10 countries where Canadians are not welcome in 2025. These restrictions might stem from diplomatic disputes, visa complications, or even cultural misunderstandings. Each country on this list has unique reasons for imposing such measures, and we'll dive into the fascinating backstory for each one. Let's get started. Country number 10. Canadians currently face some of the strictest visa policies in North Korea. Only humanitarian or journalistic applications are considered, and most are denied. North Korea's isolationist policies extend to nearly all Western nations. Visitors must adhere to rigid travel itineraries, supervised by government guides. Cultural attractions like the Juche Tower symbolize the country's ideology. Kim Il-sung Square serves as the heart of political gatherings and displays. The Arirang Festival showcases North Korea's synchronized mass performances. Diplomatic disputes over nuclear programs exacerbate travel restrictions. The Canadian government advises against all travel to North Korea. Strict penalties exist for perceived disrespect or disobedience. Photography is highly regulated and often forbidden in public spaces. Communications, including internet and phones, are heavily censored. Canadians attempting entry risk detainment over minor infractions. There is no Canadian consular presence in North Korea for emergencies. The nation's secretive nature makes it one of the world's most inaccessible places. Country number 9. Afghanistan's ongoing security concerns place it on Canada's do not travel list. Canadians face extreme danger from insurgent groups and unstable conditions. Kabul, once bustling, remains a city under siege by sporadic attacks. Canadians lack access to adequate consular support in the region. Rich historical sites like the Buddhas of Bamiyan are endangered by conflict. Afghanistan was a hub of the Silk Road, connecting ancient trade routes. The cultural diversity of tribes reflects centuries of history and tradition. Political instability complicates visa processing for all foreigners. Travel routes are perilous, with frequent kidnappings and bombings reported. Humanitarian workers are often the only outsiders permitted to enter. The opium trade contributes to violence and instability across the country. Afghanistan's rugged landscapes are as beautiful as they are dangerous. Canadians visiting without authorization risk severe penalties. The country's lack of a stable government further hinders diplomacy. Ancient monuments, though awe-inspiring, remain largely inaccessible. Country number 8. Canada-Iran relations have been strained since the closure of embassies in 2012. Canadians require a visa and an Iranian host to visit, which is hard to arrange. The government restricts media personnel and journalists from entering. Iran boasts architectural wonders like the Nasir al-Mulk Mosque. Persepolis, an ancient ceremonial capital, attracts history enthusiasts worldwide. Canadians find it challenging to access Iran's rich Persian art and culture. Political disagreements often result in reciprocal travel restrictions. The Canadian government advises against all travel to Iran for safety reasons. Visitors risk being accused of espionage or other charges. Dual nationals face additional scrutiny and potential detention. Iran's bazaars are cultural treasures but remain out of reach for many Canadians. Tourism in Iran is robust but primarily caters to non-Western visitors. Canadians visiting illegally face severe penalties, including imprisonment. Iran's relations with Western nations heavily influence visa policies. Despite its beauty, Iran remains a restricted destination for Canadians. Country number 7. Yemen has been ravaged by civil war, rendering it highly unsafe for travel. Canadians face significant risks, including violence and terrorism. The old city of Sana'a, a UNESCO site, showcases Yemen's unique architecture. Yemen's geopolitical position has made it a hotspot for conflict. The country's humanitarian crisis affects millions of residents and visitors. Canadians are advised to avoid all forms of travel to Yemen. There is no Canadian consular presence in Yemen for emergencies. Pirates operating in nearby waters add another layer of danger. The historic Marib Dam dates back to the Kingdom of Saba. Canadians caught in Yemen face challenges evacuating safely. Religious and tribal diversity highlights Yemen's complex history. Conflict has left many archaeological sites vulnerable to destruction. Canadians must obtain special permission to enter, which is rarely granted. The ongoing blockade restricts access to essential goods and services. Yemen's rich history is overshadowed by its current instability. Country number 6. Syria's decade-long civil war has devastated its infrastructure. Canadians are prohibited from traveling due to extreme safety risks. The ancient city of Palmyra has suffered significant damage. Aleppo's historic citadel remains a symbol of resilience and loss. Syria's role as a cultural crossroads dates back thousands of years. Canadians face challenges obtaining visas due to ongoing conflict. The lack of diplomatic ties hinders consular support for emergencies. Refugee crises in neighboring countries highlight Syria's instability. The country's political climate poses risks for Western travelers. Canadians entering without authorization face severe legal consequences. Syria's once thriving tourism industry is now nearly non-existent. Religious landmarks like the Umayyad Mosque remain difficult to access. Travel routes are fraught with danger from militant groups. Canadians visiting illegally face detainment and harsh penalties. Syria's historical significance contrasts starkly with its present-day challenges. Country number 5. Canadians face unique restrictions due to diplomatic disagreements. Saudi Arabia recently introduced e-visas for tourism, but Canadians often struggle. The futuristic city of Neom is a symbol of Saudi innovation. Riyadh's cultural festivals are attracting global attention. The UNESCO site of Diriyah offers a glimpse into Saudi Arabia's past. Canadians face delays or denials in obtaining necessary travel documents. Political tensions over human rights affect Canadian-Saudi relations. The country's strict laws pose challenges for Western visitors. Women travelers face additional restrictions on movement and dress. Canadians visiting without proper authorization face legal consequences. Saudi Arabia's desert landscapes are stunning yet restrictive for Canadians. Consular services are limited for Canadians in emergencies. Canadians visiting for business often require additional permits. Religious sites in Mecca and Medina remain inaccessible to non-Muslims. Relations between the two nations continue to influence travel policies. Country number 4. Libya's ongoing political turmoil makes it highly unsafe for travelers. Canadians face challenges due to the absence of a stable government. The ancient Roman city of Leptis Magna is a hidden gem but hard to reach. Canada's lack of consular services complicates emergency situations. Frequent clashes between rival factions add to the danger. Canadians are advised against all travel to Libya for safety reasons. Desert tours, once popular, are now fraught with risks. Libya's oil industry remains a focal point of its internal conflicts. Canadians attempting unauthorized entry risk detention. The Mediterranean coastline, while beautiful, is largely inaccessible. Historical landmarks are deteriorating due to lack of preservation efforts. Canadians face visa difficulties due to weak diplomatic ties. Militias control significant parts of the country, increasing risks. Libya's rich history contrasts with its present instability. Canadians must navigate extreme caution if attempting any travel. Country number 3. Somalia's reputation for piracy and violence deters Canadian travelers. Canadians face risks from militant groups and tribal conflicts. Mogadishu's historic landmarks reflect Somalia's rich history. Canadians lack access to consular support in emergencies. Somalia's oral traditions are an essential part of its culture. Canadians are advised against all travel to Somalia for safety reasons. Piracy in nearby waters poses risks for maritime travelers. Canadians attempting unauthorized entry face severe consequences. Somalia's markets showcase traditional crafts and goods. Political instability and weak governance hinder travel safety. Canadians caught in Somalia face significant evacuation challenges. Historical sites remain under threat due to ongoing conflict. Travel routes are hazardous and often controlled by armed groups. Somalia's complex clan structure influences its internal politics. Canadians just exercise extreme caution when considering travel. Country number 2. Political sanctions have resulted in restricted entry for Canadians. Canadians face visa denials due to diplomatic tensions. Minsk's Soviet-era architecture remains a cultural highlight. Belarus nature reserves are home to diverse wildlife. Canadians are advised against all travel to Belarus for safety reasons. The country's authoritarian regime poses risks for Western visitors. Canadians attempting unauthorized entry face severe penalties. Belarus's historical ties to Eastern Europe influence its modern policies. Canadians lack access to consular support in emergencies. Cultural events, once popular, are now restricted to local audiences. Travel routes are closely monitored by state authorities. Belarus's political climate limits tourism opportunities. Canadians visiting illegally face detainment and deportation. The country's relations with Canada remain strained. Canadians must navigate strict regulations when considering travel.
Country number 1.
Canada's sanctions on Russia have led to reciprocal visa restrictions. Canadians face difficulties obtaining entry permits due to strained relations. Moscow's Kremlin remains a symbol of Russian history and power. St. Petersburg's Hermitage Museum houses world-renowned art collections. Political disagreements over Ukraine heavily influence travel policies. Canadians are advised against all travel to Russia for safety reasons. Canadians attempting unauthorized entry risk legal consequences. Russia's vast landscapes, from Siberia to the Caucasus, remain unexplored by many. Cultural events in Russia are inaccessible to Canadian tourists. Canadians face challenges in accessing Russian businesses and services. Diplomatic ties between the two nations are at an all-time low. The Canadian government offers limited consular support in Russia. Russian visa policies prioritize non-Western visitors over Canadians. Historical landmarks, like Red Square, remain off-limits for most Canadians. Relations between the two nations dictate the difficulty of travel policies. As we've seen, geopolitical tensions, safety concerns, and diplomatic conflicts are the primary reasons Canadians face restrictions in these countries. It's always important to stay informed about travel advisories and understand the cultural and historical dynamics at play. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know in the comments which of these countries surprised you the most. Until next time, safe travels.